unlike the party opposite.
Downing Street says the UK's handover of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius should be reviewed by US President-elect Donald Trump before moving forward. The agreement includes a 99-year lease for the joint UK-US airbase on Diego Garcia, but has sparked concerns over security ties with China. Shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel has called the negotiations a complete humiliation, while the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch branded it a disastrous surrender of British territory. But the Prime Minister has defended the plan, insisting it ensures the military base's future and addresses what he described as wrongs of the past. And the Prime Minister says every effort will be made to stop Gerry Adams from receiving compensation for his detention during the Troubles. Sir Keir Starmer says repealing the Legacy Act, deemed unfit and unlawful by the courts, might lead to payouts for Mr Adams and others, sparking criticism from the Conservatives. The Act blocks claims by over 400 people imprisoned in the 1970s, but Labour says a replacement is being drafted to balance victims' rights with legal obligations. And the government is reviving a controversial free speech law for universities months after it was paused over concerns about protecting hate speech. The Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act, passed in 2023, gave universities a duty to promote free speech and allowed the regulator to fine institutions or student unions that failed to comply. Critics, though, including the Education Secretary, paused that law last summer, warning it could expose universities to costly legal action. Well, now a government source says the Act will be adjusted to balance academic freedom with a proper complaints process. And let's just bring you a recap, if you're just joining us here on GB News, of that breaking news tonight from the Middle East, that Israel and Hamas have reportedly reached an agreement for a ceasefire after more than a year of deadly fighting in Gaza. We are expecting an official announcement from Doha later in Qatar. We will keep that live for you as it happens. Also, just to bring you some reaction to the ceasefire announcement, first from Donald Trump, who will, of course, once again be President of the United States in just a few days. He has hailed the ceasefire tonight as an epic deal, claiming it could only have been achieved after what he described as his historic victory in the November elections in the US. And then here at home, the Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey is the first political leader to respond to the news, calling the ceasefire announcement a moment of hope after months of darkness and despair in the region. That's the news on GB News. Plenty more now on that news from Middle East with Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that. My name is Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co, and we're with you till 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me on my panel, not just one but two new faces for you tonight to the programme. What a treat for you. And they're both serving MPs. We've got Rupert Lowe, the MP for Reform UK in Great Yarmouth, and Barry Gardner, the MP for Labour in Brent West. Good evening, chaps, to both of you. Welcome as well. What a treat to like new faces on Dewbs & Co, don't we? You're very welcome tonight, as are each and every single one of you at home. What is on your mind this evening? I bet I can guess. There is a lot we need to discuss, and you can join the conversation all the usual ways. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or, of course, you can tweet or X me. Of course, in just a second, we'll be discussing the huge news in the war in Gaza, but I also want to talk to you about a lot going on in this country tonight. I want to ask you, politics now, is it essentially a three-horse race? Polls showing real surge when it comes to Reform UK, so I want to look at that, and I also want to ask you about net zero. Is this all an act of self-harm or an essential step for this country? I want to talk to you about business, and I also want to look at Sweden, what they're doing when it comes to migrants, saying that they have to accept Western values. Should we follow suit? So lots to discuss, but let's start, shall we, with that big news of the night. That breaking news in Gaza, a ceasefire deal and hostage release deal has been agreed. Let me cross live to our political editor, Christopher Hurt. Bring us up to speed, Christopher, with that news.
That's right. A huge news tonight, historic, you might say. A 6-week initial ceasefire. We think there'll be 33 Israeli hostages released. All women, soldiers and civilians, children, men over 50. The Israeli parliament will vote on this tomorrow. We're expecting a statement overnight, or tonight, I should say, from Qatar, which brokered the deal. Donald Trump said this epic ceasefire could only have happened as a result of our historic victory in November, he said. And this is what I find so interesting, as it signalled to the entire world that my administration will seek peace and negotiate deals, plural, to ensure the safety of all Americans and our allies. What is next for Donald Trump? Is this the beginning of a deal-making presidency, Michelle? Will he try and seek a quick deal with Russia? And then maybe finally sink the Chagos deal, which we understand people around Donald Trump are not happy with. We don't know what's happened there. We look back, don't we, just 8 days from Trump. He said 8 days ago, if those hostages are not back by the inauguration next week, all hell will break out. Well, he said that, and this is what happened. No wonder Trump is declaring this is his victory, this peace deal. But we await to see the small print, and that's why on the right of the screen there, concern maybe in Israel, more joy in Gaza. Let's wait and see how it plays out in coming hours. We'll be hearing shortly from Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and Kevin Badenoch, the leader of the opposition.
Just to be clear as well, you're saying about how it all plays out. Netanyahu, he is yet to confirm this. Is that right?
That's right. We have yet to hear from Israel. We are expecting a statement from Qatar. Nothing yet from Israel, and nothing, of course, from Hamas, given its leadership has been decimated by the attacks from Israel. This being driven by Donald Trump on social media and reports of 33 releases. And we'll wait and see the detail of what comes back in return, because will it see Hamas fighters being released by Israel? We don't know yet. So right now, it's a tentative good news. We're hearing from Ed Davey. He's the only UK politician to issue a statement so far. He says it's incumbent on the UK and the entire international community to do all it can to ensure that this ceasefire deal does not turn out to be a temporary truce. So we think there's a 6-week initial ceasefire, some hostage releases. Again, Donald Trump saying it goes back to his landslide back in November. He says it's the first of other deals, plural. So we're watching Ukraine and Russia in coming weeks, and also, of course, on a smaller scale, this Chagos deal, unpopular amongst the right wing in the UK, and we're told, amongst elements around Donald Trump.
Interesting stuff. That's Christopher Hope there. Thank you very much for that update. So, of course, if you're just joining the programme, that big news there. Huge news, actually, when it comes to the Middle East. And for many of you at home, that hostage release deal, ceasefire deal that has been reached. 33 hostages to be released in the first 6-week phase, with at least 3 hostages freed every week in that period. I thought one of the key points that Christopher was just making there was what Donald Trump has had to say, because the first reaction to this, when I tweeted out that the show was coming up and that we were going to discuss this, one of my viewers immediately got in touch and said, this is the Donald Trump effect. And as Christopher has just been explaining there, Donald Trump speaking up, saying that this is essentially, he feels, Rupert, thanks to him and his election. He didn't put it quite in those words, but he says this will be a deal-making government. This will be the first deal of many. So people will be looking ahead to things like Ukraine, Chagos and the like. What's your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think initially, if it is true, and again, one's not quite sure of where the truth lies here yet, but if it's true that there's been a ceasefire reached, I think that's good news for everybody. I mean, far too many people have died since that vile attack on October the 7th and what's happened subsequently. The key for me is, and I'm delighted Donald Trump was elected. I think he is obviously the catalyst for a lot of this. But the key, Michelle, is we must get a long-term settlement to the issues that are plaguing the Middle East on this, because otherwise we'll just get a repeat of what's happened before. And that's the key to what needs to be sorted out.
Yeah, and I do just want to add, we're getting into, you say that the devil is in the detail, so to speak, and of course we've just been hearing there that Netanyahu has not yet confirmed this situation, so a lot of these details will be unfolding over the next kind of 24 hours or so. Got an interesting panel lined up to discuss this. Got the editor of the Jewish Chronicle tomorrow, and a Palestinian who's very passionate about this as well, so be interested to explore this. But for now, Donald Trump seemingly taking some of the glory there. Do you share his sentiment, Barry?
Well, look, I'm so thrilled for the hostages and their families. What those people have been through, Michelle, is just unbelievable. And it's wonderful that they are now going to be released. I understand that it's children, women, both serving in the armed forces and civilian women, as well as the over 50s men that will be the first to be released. And that's phenomenally good news. Of course, I don't know if there's going to be an exchange of hostages on the other side as well. Let's hope that this is part of the settlement. And look, if it's Donald Trump that's done this, hey, great. Whoever is responsible for this, it's a huge step forward. And, you know, I agree with Rupert. What we need now to use this time of a ceasefire as a platform where the negotiations can take place that can ensure that we move steadily towards a two-state solution that is peaceful, sustainable, and just.
Yeah, lots of reaction from you guys at home, echoing this sentiment when it comes to the hostages. Colin on the email says, thank God that the end may be in sight for these hostages. We can only hope and pray that all of this goes through. As you quite rightly say, I mean, there'll be mothers sitting today on one side of the fence hoping that they'll finally get to see their children again. On the other side of the fence, you'll have mothers sitting there, not just mothers, of course, praying that finally the bombs will stop raining down on them and their children. The death toll in all of this has just been absolutely catastrophic. For everybody's sake, let's hope and pray that all of this will finally be able to come to an end, and a sustainable end as well, to Rupert's point. Spike on your say says no one should get too excited over all of this because nothing is currently guaranteed. Alison says, I really hope that all of this will see an end to the appalling anti-Semitism in this country. She feels that has really escalated since October the 7th. Benny says, you know what, whatever you think of Donald Trump, he has essentially been the catalyst for all of this. So as I said, this conversation will rumble on. We'll be staying across that situation as it develops over the course of the next hour. And of course, we'll be getting into this in much more detail as well with that panel. Once we know lots more of these details over the next 24 hours. But coming up after the break, I want to return to matters in this country. There's a lot to discuss. Reform UK seems to be surging in the polls. Are we seeing a new political era unfolding in this country? I want to explore net zero. I want to look at businesses in this country as well. Productivity. Are we a bunch of lazy so-and-sos? Do we need to do more to empower businesses in this country if we really are to achieve that growth? All of that and more to come. I'll see you in 2.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Estelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This was thought to be a Ruskin. Ruskin was a very considerable polymath, an artist as well as many other things. So do you know why it was submitted for reappraisal? Was there a bit of a suspicion that it had been misidentified?
No, as you say, you know, it's a service that Christie's offer. You can submit an artwork that you have, so anyone can submit it and request an estimate, and then the auction house's appraisal service allows you space as well to describe it and ask for evaluation. And Christie's sort of looked at it behind the sheet of dirty old glass and recognised a sort of Turner-esque mood and feel and ambience about it. And because there was this close relationship between Ruskin and Turner, which is fascinating, we'll come on to that shortly, but they sort of felt, well, the brushstrokes are very strong, the line is very economic, and the colour of the palette seems to be rather Turner-esque. And then they called in a specialist paper historian who confirmed that actually the paper that was used was one that Turner favoured himself. So yes, it was originally considered to be by Ruskin, but then we discovered something more magnificent. And don't forget, what's really interesting, now it's for sale. The lucky buyer is not just buying a picture. The lucky buyer is buying a life story, a relationship that actually changed the course of art history because of the relationship between Ruskin and Turner themselves.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock alongside me. The two MPs, although slightly different in their outlook, shall we say, Rupert Laird, the Reform UK MP, and Barry Gardner, the Labour Party MP. Now,
but Michelle, we did agree that it was a great thing we got the ceasefire.
We did. I mean, how
we
could anyone
started
not?
off with agreement.
We did. We agreed. We all agreed. I think everyone would agree. But I do think
Is that
that's
good for my image, Barry?
I think that I was just about to say. I think that's where the agreement. Something tells me that's where the agreement might stop, because I want to talk to you about the political landscape in this country. It does seem to be fast evolving. There are polls out all the time, and I always take these with a bit of a pinch of salt because, you know, there's not actually going to be a general election tomorrow, is there, or any time soon. But notwithstanding that, it's hard to deny the rise of Reform UK. Depending on which poll that you look at, there was one, I think it was yesterday, it put Labour, YouGov one, sorry, this weekend, Labour 26%, Reform 25%, Tories 22%, More in Common one, Tories 25%, Labour 24%, Reform UK 24%, and then there was another one, Labour 27%, Reform 24%, Tories 23%. Is the political landscape changing in this country, and is it down to Reform UK, Rupert?
History is in the making, Michelle. This is the first time for 100 years or over 100 years where a new party has broken through. So we are now neck and neck with Labour and the Tories in the polls. That probably understates our position rather than overstates it. And I think the British people are very slow to react, but when they do react, they react very quickly. That's the lesson of history. And I think my analysis of Parliament, having been in there as a businessman for the last 5 months, is that it's dysfunctional. It is a case of two cheeks of the same backside, as George Galloway said. It needs, if you were looking at it as a company, it needs radical change. And I think the British people can now see that. It's dysfunctional. So we're in there. We're a disruptor. We've got a lot to do. We're now polling well. We're doing well. I think we are going to win the election. And it's up to us now to get the structure and the policies in place that are going to radically reform Britain, because that's what we need.
So you regard yourself as the real opposition, is what I'm hearing you say?
We're the opposition. I think the young people are signing up in droves, quite rightly. This two-party, or uniparty, as I call it, is not going to lead them into any form of green and grassy uplands. We need change. We need radical change. We need to release the instinctive ability of British people, and we need to free them from the fetters of government, which is far too big.
6 months pretty much in power. Barry, do you regard Reform UK as the real opposition to you?
I think Rupert's right to say that they are a disruptor. And I think he's also right to say that we need a bit of disruption. But look, the great thing about a new party in any political system is that people are able to project what they want onto the party. And think that, oh, here's a new party, they'll do what I would like to see from government. And I think there's a lot of that in the polls. I think if I were a Conservative, I would say that Liz Truss has a great deal to answer for in terms of the budget that she put through and the loss that was, the huge damage that did to our economy. And I think that has meant that a lot of formerly Conservative voters have thought, well, should I stick with this lot or should I look to pastures new with reform? And so I think there is this sort of split in the right of British politics, which is now genuinely ambivalent about where it's going to place its vote at the next election. Now, I'm a Labour MP. I hope they're going to place their vote back where where most people placed it at this election, which is in the box marked Labour. But I think we have an uphill battle. We've got a huge majority, as you know, in Parliament.
But do you think it's going well? You have got a huge majority. You're 6 months in. Do you look in the mirror and think it's doing a good job?
I think we have got huge challenges facing this government, huge challenges that have been left over in large part.
But do you think you're doing a good job? You're 6 months in. You look at yourself in the morning in the mirror. Do you think, yes, we're doing a good job?
Let me say, I think we've done a lot of things that are really good.
Yeah.
OK? I think the one area that I would say we've not done so well on is in our media management and our media strategy. We don't get out the positive things that we are doing. You know, when kids are going back to school and they're getting breakfast clubs where they've never had them before, I think a lot of parents in this country are going to say, you know what? Oh, that's something that this Labour government has done that I really am pleased about.
So when someone on minimum wage is paying for the breakfast of, I don't know, someone who's got a dad that's absolutely minted, is that a success in your mind?
Well, look, it's not about somebody on minimum wage paying that because you will...
It's not means tested, though, is it? That's my point.
No, it's not means tested, and that's one of the wonderful things I think about our benefit system, that not everything is means tested. And let me explain why.
Winter fuel allowance now is.
Because, and I believe in universal benefits. I think they're really important because they give us a sense of no matter how well off you are, you still get the NHS free at the point of use. That's great. You know, it brings society together because there are things that we all share and we feel we're all getting something out of society.
So, Barry, can I ask you, what are you proud of that you've done over the last 6 months? As far as I can see, you've damaged the education system, which ultimately is one of our best exports. You've damaged farming. You've damaged small businesses. And you've damaged just about everything that you've touched. So can you tell me what you're proud of that you've actually achieved?
Yes, of course I can.
Because I can't see anything.
No, I know, but then you and I disagree over the fundamentals. But
let's not forget the pensioners either.
Let me tell you the things that I think are really good in what we have done. I think if you look at the latest investment round, 50% of the investment now coming into this country is coming in for renewable energy. That is a huge turnaround, and it shows the confidence that investors have in the UK as being one of the leading places now because of what this government's done, because we said that we will stop the ban.
You're proud of, that's what you're proud of.
Very proud of stopping the ban on onshore wind.
Mad Ed Miliband's sort of lunacy. That you're proud of that.
Look, I don't throw about sort of hyperbolic criticism of people in that way, but I'm very proud of many of the things that we've done.
Well, you've teed up the next thing for me, because this conversation is going to continue, because someone that's not so proud of the things that you've just mentioned in terms of the strategy and the impact on business is Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He's saying that net zero can essentially see the end of UK industrialisation. So let's carry on this conversation, shall we, in 2.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. We could see some rather foggy starts as we head into tomorrow. Then through the day, we'll see a mix of cloud and some brighter spells, though it is going to be a cooler feeling day for most. Largely settled as we head into tonight as high pressure dominates, but a frontal system in the far north can bring some drizzle at times. This mainly across the far northwest of Scotland. Mostly dry for many of us. Plenty of cloud this evening across the south and southeast. This could be quite murky by the morning, likely to see some fog in place. Even some fog developing under some clearer skies, and also plenty of cloud across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Feeling chillier too, also under these cloudier skies, but for many it's quite a mild night on offer, particularly across the far northwest of Scotland. So to start the day tomorrow, plenty of cloud around across Scotland, but feeling chillier in any clearer spells. Also a chance we could still see some light outbreaks of drizzle across the very far north. Quite a cloudy start across Northern Ireland and a few more clearer spells across Northern Ireland, northern parts of Wales too, but chillier here. We could even see some pockets of frost and also some fog, and plenty of cloud across southern and central areas of England. Quite murky starts, and this fog slow to clear in places, so do take care if you're travelling around through the morning. Then through much of the day it remains fairly similar. Should start to see some sunshine across Wales and northern England, but that cloud is set to stay across the south and southeast, and turning quite blustery across the far north of Scotland through the day too. A cooler day on offer for most, but for many across Scotland, temperatures above average for the time of year. Heading into tomorrow, likely to see more outbreaks of rain and drizzle across parts of Scotland, quite blustery here too. And elsewhere, plenty of cloud around, though it is going to be staying largely dry. Both best of the sunshine just to the northeast of any high ground, but for most it's going to be quite a cloudy day on offer, and remaining fairly cloudy as we head into the weekend too. And that means temperatures are really going to struggle, so likely feeling chilly at times. Bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays up in Lancashire continue for the M65. The motorway is closed in 2 places near Burnley. First of all, westbound from junction 11 to 8 and eastbound from junction 8 to 10. It's down to an ongoing police investigation causing long queues. In Oxfordshire on the M40, the inside lane on that 3-lane stretch closed northbound from junction 8A to 9. Just north of the Oxford Services turnoff, where a lorry's broken down. In Norfolk, southeast of Norwich, the A146 is blocked near the Framingham Picket exit following an accident. The Surrey stretch of the M25 is queuing anti-clockwise from junction 9 to 8. The Leatherhead-Reigate stretch following an earlier collision that's been cleared. And finally in Somerset, the A358 is closed on Halsey Hill at Crocombe for recovery work after an accident involving a lorry. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, welcome to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, till 7. If you're just joining the show alongside me, Rupert Lowe, the MP for Reform UK in Great Yarmouth, and Barry Gardner, the MP for Labour in Brent West. You're very welcome. Tonight, before the break, Rupert was asking Barry, what kind of things are you proud of after your first 6 months in power? Universal breakfast going into schools was one of the things, and also some of the investments into business, and like what I would paraphrase as essentially the net zero situation. Sir Jim Ratcliffe, very successful entrepreneur, he has been suggesting that actually this obsession with net zero, Rupert, could potentially see the end of UK industry. Is this an essential quest for us, net zero, or is it an act of self-harm in your view?
Well, in my view, Michelle, given the emissions from China, Indonesia, India and other parts of the world, this is an own goal in football terms. We are going to push up the cost of our energy, and really what we should be doing is ensuring that our businesses have cheap energy. That's how we flourish. But on the point of Jim Ratcliffe, I think, again, I've never understood why our parliamentarians and our leaders don't listen to people like Sir James Dyson, people like Sir Jim Ratcliffe. They are very successful people. In James Dyson's case, you know, he has set up his own academy. He's teaching engineers. He's doing a fantastic job. And people should listen to people like that. They're the people who generate wealth. They're the people who release middle-class people, aspirational people who actually want to work and want to achieve. They are very important to our economy, and they're often not given enough credibility. So I'm entirely in Jim Ratcliffe's camp. I would like to see us making the most of our current energy resources. Obviously, we need to try and minimise our carbon footprint. But, you know, China's still mining coal building railways to take it to coal-fired power stations.
So you're in the drill, baby, drill camp.
I would certainly be fracking. I would certainly be making the most of our current energy reserves, which are still there, which people are now basically putting a cap on. So I think it's an own goal, Michelle, and I don't agree with what we're doing.
Well, look, Rupert, you know that the biggest hit that business has taken in the past few years was when Putin invaded Ukraine and the gas and oil into Western Europe dried up, and we were subject to the vagaries of that roller coaster, which is the fossil fuel market. Okay,
Barry, that's because the politicians have not dealt with our gas.
I let you make your case. Please let me finish. Okay. Now, that was what the price spike was all about. Our dependency on oil and gas is precisely why we had to pump, it was the Conservatives that did it, £44 billion into the economy to bail people out because they couldn't afford to heat their homes. That was because of oil and gas prices spiking. And it had nothing to do with renewables. Now, if you look at the latest reports that come out, in fact, today the Secretary of State and I were speaking at it at the Select Committee today. If you look at the latest report that has come out, it shows that the pathway to clean power 2030 actually is achievable, and not only that, but it can be done. So the way in which we are getting industry focused and aligned around net zero, hydrogen, green hydrogen coming in.
Barry.
I'm surprised at Ineos saying that they're concerned about the petrochemicals and industry and the chemicals industry, because actually it's green hydrogen that is going to power our economy, power our cement.
Barry, with a front bench who've got 26 of them, 3 of them have got what I would call a modicum of business experience. I mean, you can't talk with such authority.
Rupert, I ran my own business in the city for 12 years.
I'm sorry, your front bench is a joke.
I'm sorry.
And it doesn't behove you well to start speaking about Russia. Russia's affected, her invasion of Ukraine affected Europe far more because the Germans relied far more on Russian oil and gas.
Exactly. Exactly. You proved my point.
What we should be doing, is we have gas reserves which we could frack. We have the best fracking reserves, and we have been stopped by the Green lobby from using natural resources which could reduce the cost of our energy.
Rupert,
just look at America.
You can talk over me.
Look at what's happened in North and South Dakota. We are scoring an own goal, Barry. I totally disagree with you.
You can talk over me, but you can't deny that you've just proven my point.
No, I haven't.
The very reason that Germany was hit far harder than we were is because we had more renewables in our system and they relied too much, in your own words, on oil and gas.
In the last week, Barry, we've had Dunkelfloater, we've had no wind, and therefore we've been at the risk of having power cuts.
Actually, if you...
So I'm sorry, I don't agree with you. We have a different opinion on this.
Well, it's not an opinion here.
And you are going to beggar middle-class Britain.
It's not, no, because it's cheaper.
No, it's not cheaper.
Renewables are cheaper, but if
hang on, because people say that's because they're heavily subsidised.
They're not cheaper. That's a lie.
The subsidy that we give to oil and gas far exceeds. Michelle, do you understand that the subsidies that are given?
Look at the taxes you take off the oil.
You're interrupting again.
No, but you're picking one little.
No, I'm not. I'm answering Michelle's question. Okay, the subsidies that we give to developing oil and gas, predominantly gas, in the North Sea basin, under Rishi Sunak, that was 92 pence in every pound that was spent, paid for by you and me, the taxpayer. They got that in tax relief. Now, did we get 92% of the profits they made out of that oil and gas? No, we didn't. So the subsidies have been overwhelmingly to the oil and gas industry. And if you look at the International Energy Agency, they say it's over £500 billion a year globally going to that subsidy.
What do you make to that at home? Are you reassured by that point or not? Do you think there should be a referendum about this ambition for net zero in this country?
Well, look, we stood very plainly at the last election on a manifesto that set out what we were going to do. Not only that, But actually, the Conservative
but hold on a
government
minute.
also
You
said
went
they were
back
going
on
to...
a lot of the stuff that you promised before the election. You completely U-turned on it, and that's why a lot of people feel that the way that they do towards the Labour Party, because they will say, a lot of people will feel that they were misled to vote for you, because then when you took office, what was actually delivered off the back of it was different to what was promised.
They promised no APR. They put APR on farmland.
No.
They've resiled on most of what they promised.
Sorry, we didn't promise no APR. We promised...
You did.
No
Steve Reid, on a number of
occasions,
occasions, said there would be no APR introduced under a Labour government. Got the farming vote, and then he resiled on it. Come on, Barry.
Well, as you know...
I've got him.
As you know, Rupert, it's always the case that...
Steve Reid, another man who what he knows about farming could be written on the back of a postage stamp. I mean, he hasn't got a clue.
That farmers...
Nor is Daniel
Farmers
Zeitler.
tend to vote Conservative, but they usually, financially, do a lot better under a Labour government.
No, but you said you would not introduce APR on farmland. You categorically stated it.
Well,
barefaced lie.
I don't believe it was a lie. I believe that we had very changed circumstances.
He also promised you would sort out the coastal defences in my constituency. Well, another barefaced lie, which he's not going to do.
Again, you talk over me, but you know, you make your point.
Was you about to mention that £22 billion black hole?
I always
not again. We can't.
I always called it the 21.9.
I know, but it makes people groan at home. I've done this job long enough to know that when you mention this 22 billion black hole, people will be groaning and they'll be shouting at the screen stuff like a big amount of money of that black hole were things like the public sector pay rises that were a political choice as opposed to a political necessity.
Sorry, can I just point out to you though, Michelle, that yes, they were a political choice, but they're a political choice that every government has made, and the cost to our economy of not paying the pay rise, for example, to the doctors, and having more and more people on waiting lists. The Conservatives had got that up to 7 million people on waiting lists, right? The cost to our economy of those people not being in their work, in actually being productive for the economy, was enormous. So actually releasing that, making sure that we're getting those extra 40,000 appointments a week that we've done, another hit for the Labour government.
Couldn't disagree with you more, Barry, but again...
Actually, it's getting people back to work, it's being productive for the economy, and that's what's going to get us out of the mess the Conservatives got us into.
No.
Well, you go on then. You say you couldn't disagree with him more. Go on, have your say.
I just can't disagree with them more. I mean, as I say, Michelle, I watch what Rachel Reeves is doing. She uses oxymorons like she's going to regulate for growth. The economy is disappearing. People are not going to invest. I know, I run businesses, the budgets cost
But that's
everybody...
not disagreeing with what I said.
Let him finish.
The budgets cost everybody a fortune. We will be cutting back on staff. We will be basically not employing people. We will be making ourselves far more efficient. We probably won't be investing, and growth is driven by investment. And you are going to see, in my opinion, a sterling crisis over the next 6 months. And that means that we can't import the things we used to import. And that's going to cause everybody a terrible problem with inflation, because we do rely on imports. And what Labour's doing is they are destroying our economy. They have no idea what they're doing. And if you talk to any small businesses, and I talk to a lot of small businesses, I own a lot of small businesses, we are cutting back. We are not going to be investing. There is not the confidence. And they can say what they want about the public sector. The public sector's the problem. It's far too big. It's far too inefficient. It doesn't work. And they believe they're pinning their hopes on the public sector. Public sector it's a great big elephant on everybody's back. You've got an increasingly small private sector working its backside off to fund a bloated state. And when they get that through their heads, when sterling collapses, I mean, can you believe Labour are now saying they're going to cut the size of the public sector? Do you believe them with that? I don't.
Rupert,
load of old rubbish.
Rupert, you've given us a stream of consciousness, but you haven't, in all of that, disagreed with the fundamental point that I was making, that if you get people off the hospital waiting lists, they get back out to work and the economy is able to produce more.
Barry, the NHS
Do you agree?
is broken.
Do you
the
agree?
NHS is broken, and you're chucking another... You're just chucking money at the NHS.
Don't avoid the question.
That's not going to help.
Do you agree?
That's not going to help the economy.
What, to get people back into
Barry,
work?
let me tell you, most people don't rely on the NHS now. The NHS is a fraud. I've said it public and I'll say it again. It's broken and it needs complete reform. Just throwing another 25 billion at it's not going to solve the problem. What we need to do is rebuild
we agree
it
on that
completely.
point. We
and
agree on that
most people who
point.
can afford it now are paying their national insurance to fund the NHS. They're also paying private doctors because they can't get
You've gone
the
off on
treatment they
another
need.
one
I haven't.
instead of answering the question.
I have not.
You have. Because
Chucking more money
question is,
at a broken outfit is not the answer.
I agree with that. I said to you, I'd agree with that. You have to reform the system as well. But
how are you reforming?
The fundamental point that I'm making to you is if you get more people seen by consultants, and all of the viewers of this programme will know somebody in their family or their friends who's been waiting for months to get an appointment, if they can get that appointment, get that work done, they can get back out into their job and be productive in the economy. Do you
actually
agree?
think you're going to be able to mend the NHS in its current form?
I believe we need to transform the NHS, and I believe things like AI will be doing that, helping us do that. There are all sorts of changes that Wes Streeting is trying to make in the NHS at the moment, and I welcome them, because it's not just about money, it is about transforming the structure.
So you think all of this stuff in the head of the beast, you're going to be able to transpose that down this inefficient chain called the NHS and make it work? You think that's going to work?
That isn't...
But Barry, come on, be honest with the public. Do you think it's going to work?
I believe that what we're doing is going to change the NHS and make it more productive. Yes, I do. Absolutely.
Well, you'll be NHS users at home, so you can decide which of these two chaps you agree with. We're just talking about hiring there in public sector. Someone in the public sector that is hiring is Westminster City Council. Wait till you hear this job advert, though, because many people are saying it's racist against white people. I'll have the details in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Storm Felix is set to affect central parts of the Mediterranean, bringing some rain, mountain snow and also strong winds. But further west, largely settled for the Canary Islands, Madeira, Portugal and also most of Spain. But towards the eastern coast, we could see some heavy showers here. The heaviest likely across Sicily and parts of Sardinia, and also likely to see some mountain snow across the highest parts of Italy and also Greece. Towards the weekend, though, largely settled and temperatures remaining around the same.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
People living with obesity are people, and they deserve the right for treatment and care as much as anyone else. What we need to understand is that obesity is a chronic condition, or a disease, as some people call it. It's not a choice. And this is the bit that people really struggle with, is that people think this is a lifestyle choice and people have done this to themselves. What we now know is the science and the evidence shows us that this isn't a choice. People have genetic predispositions for living with obesity. What we need to do is be a bit more compassionate and caring to people that live with obesity and support them to make healthier choices, not actually just discriminate and tell them that they're doing something wrong when, you know, if I had asthma, for instance, you wouldn't be saying the same thing to me there. But then it's exactly the same.
Usually, if you're going for an operation of some form or other, there'll be often there is a criteria. So my mother, she had a knee operation. They wanted to make sure her blood pressure was right and all these things. This is, I mean, to hear somebody say that obesity isn't a choice just because you've got genetic predisposition to it, it's just exactly why people seem to be legitimizing being overweight. Ozempic has proved that people are overweight because they eat too much. Because Ozempic tells you to stop eating, it makes you think that you've eaten and makes you feel full, so you don't eat. You may be predisposed to anything, but you also have a large percentage of responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. So absolutely, it is in the patient's best interests, because if you're overweight, it'll take you longer to heal. You're more likely to have complications, the same if you smoke, and also the outcomes are usually better. So for a smoker, if you quit, say 4 weeks before surgery, you're 25%, your risk is lower of respiratory complications. So this is literally, of course it's discriminatory, because you have to decide, you have to prioritise the people that are likely to survive the operations.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Thank you, Britain.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for subscribing.
Thank you for your support.
It's you that make us the People's Channel.
As we reflect on our journey so far, we're filled with immense gratitude.
You mean the world to us. We couldn't have reached this point without you.
As a very special thank you, we are giving you the chance to win one of 50 GB News thank you boxes. They're worth £50 each.
For full terms and conditions, and to enter, just go to gbnews.com/thank you.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock. Rupert Lowe, Barry Gardner alongside me. Matt on the email says, Michelle, in my view, net zero has been a disaster for industry in this country, particularly the steel industry, where we have lost the ability to produce primary steel. He says it's an absolute outrage. Mark says, Michelle, we spend billions on things like green energy, sending money abroad in foreign aid, but yet we can't seem to give money to waspy women. Riddle me that, he says. There you go. Look, we've just been talking about hiring and talking about the public sector, which leads me nicely to something that caught my eye. Westminster City Council, they have got a job up for grabs. If this sounds like you, an executive assistant, nice salary, you know, up to £64,000 per annum. That's not bad, is it? Anyway, the bit that's caught people's eye is the following about you section. It says the council is committed to achieving diverse shortlists to support our desire to increase the number of staff from underrepresented groups in our workforce. We especially encourage applications from a global majority, so people who are black, Asian, brown, dual heritage, indigenous to the global south, or have been racialised as ethnic minorities, formerly known as BAME. And whilst the role is indeed open to all applicants, we will utilise the positive action provisions of the Equality Act 2010 to appoint a candidate from the global majority background where there is a choice between two candidates of equal merit. Many people are saying that this is racist, anti-white. What do you think to that, Rupert Lowe?
I think it's a national disgrace, and it's happening across the country with, in the NHS, in local councils. I mean, when are we going to get to the situation where people are hired on merit alone? Ultimately, I don't think it matters what people's colour is, what their sexuality is. I don't think it matters at all. What matters is merit, merit, merit. And when are we going to get back to that? That's common sense, that's logic, that's fair.
But what they'll say is, if you've got two people of equal merit, so they would argue that the merit's there, that's when they would choose what I would say is the non-white one.
But they're not choosing on merit, Michelle, they're choosing on quotas. This is why the House of Commons is weak, because Cameron and Blair, they selected on quotas. They didn't select on ability and merit. And this is what will happen to the country. So, no, I totally disagree with it. It's a disgrace. And, it's about time these people manned up. If it was a private company, it wouldn't happen, because people need people based on merit, nothing else.
If you are a white executive assistant and you read that and you know that ultimately if push comes to shove and you come down to the bottom two, then you're just not going to get that job anyway if there's a non-white applicant of your calibre. What do you think? Is it going to make you just think, well, what's the point?
Two things. I agree that people should be appointed on merit. That's the first thing to say. The second is to say that actually what the council has stated quite clearly is that people from ethnic minority backgrounds are underrepresented, not overrepresented, but underrepresented in their workforce. So the second thing to say is, I think it's a good thing when organisations reflect the community that they serve. And that means that there is role models for everyone in that community to aspire to. So I think that's a good thing. The other point that I would make is the very point that you highlighted, Michelle, and that is that they have said very clearly that it is only when there are two candidates of equal merit that they would then use the provisions on the Act to choose the person from a minority ethnic background. Now, the point that Rupert made was he doesn't believe that that's the case.
No, I don't.
Well, that's a matter that if somebody was in that position of coming down to the final two, the top two, and they didn't get the job, and they believed, as Rupert did, that it was unfair, that in fact they were not considered as having equal merit, right, then they could bring a discrimination case against the council on that. So, because they would be saying, look, I am clearly more than the other person, and they would have to show that. But as it's phrased, I don't see anything wrong with it. If, as Rupert is suggesting, this is just all window dressing and the council is determined to appoint somebody who doesn't have the same merit as another candidate, then that would be wrong.
The cancer of DEI is running deep through Britain. It's running deep through the public sector. It runs deep through a lot of the big multinationals. And what it means is people are hired basically on quotas, not on merit. And you can just see it coming through an advert like this. So, no, it should be all on merit, and that way the country will benefit.
Let me ask you, Rupert, do you believe that there is something such as bias that operates? So, for example, and Michelle, you will know this, I'm sure, it used to be the case that because most of the senior management in a company were men, it was actually difficult for women to get appointed to senior roles. And many women have broken through that on merit.
Can I answer that as a woman? Because I'm almost out of time. I've never felt discriminated against as a woman in all my life. I don't feel I'm any different to you or you. I never present myself as I'm a female, this and that. No. I find it interesting. The Labour Party had women quotas or all women shortlists for a very long time, but yet you've never had a female leader. And I found that absolutely fascinating. I would never want to be on an all-woman shortlist just because of the fact I've got a vagina. And anyway, when it comes to all-women shortlist, one of the things that I can't help but notice that half the time now, no one even really knows what a woman is, and you can have all these fellas, when it suits them, that they could just turn around and say that they're a woman, and before you know it, off they are in their little shortlist.
Can I just say, Michelle, Barry's line is a convenient do-gooder line. That's what he's been quoting.
There you
do-gooder
go.
line.
He says it's a do-gooder line. Look, Westminster Council say they're not doing anything wrong and that their policies are in line with industry standards and consistent with UK law and have been there for a long time. But look, time flies. That's all we've got time for. Thanks, gents. Thanks to you at home. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there. Good evening. Welcome